So let's get it started by talking about today's market. In this course, we try to do our best to always refilm and make sure we're giving you relevant information. So as I film this, it's the beginning of 2024. And what that allows us to do is start to look back on 2023 and 2022 as valid data points. And what we can strongly tell you right now is that we are in a buyer's market. And these types of opportunities come and go. And a lot of the times we don't realize we're in a buyer's market or that it's an opportune time to buy as a market when we're in the middle of these types of markets. So the good thing is you have us on our side. So I'd love to start this by looking at purchase price compared to asking price in 2023 to start to show you some of the data points that we look at and some of those that we want to share with you. So in 2023, 43% of buyers purchased their home less than the list price or the original asking price. And 31% of buyers paid that asking price or the exact listing price. This is the great indication that we have that buyers have more negotiating power. This statistic does not capture if a home sold due to multiple rounds of price cuts. So what we're seeing in today's market is that demand is lower thanks to higher interest rates. And because demand is lower, buyers finally have the upper hand. From 2019, really the beginning of the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019, we entered one of the biggest and best sellers market ever in the history of American housing. So obviously what comes up a lot of the time must come down. So as interest rates started to go up, demand started to go down, less and less buyers were willing to participate in the market. And so for the first time in a few years, the buyers started to take the upper hand. And so what that means is that they finally have a little bit of wiggle room when asking for either price cuts or negotiating in different ways, which we're going to talk about throughout this class. Just remember, as interest rates fall lower, demand is going to pick up. It is inevitable. Real estate, just like in any other market, is a cycle. So the best advice that we can give you as we start the class is try to buy when it's a buyer's market and try to sell when it's a seller's market. Let's look at the table on the right so we can drive home some of these data points. So notice that about 10% of buyers got a discount larger than 10% on the original ask price. And so using just an easy example, if I wanted a $500,000 house, that means that there's a 10% chance today that I will get a discount on my purchase price larger than $50,000, which is tremendous value. Now let's look at the rest of the data. So it seems like at least if we just add 21 plus 12, about, call it 33% of buyers got a discount equivalent to 5 or 10% knocked off of their purchase price. And 31% of buyers paid at least 100% of the list price. So if you're a buyer today, the chances are roughly 40 to 45% that you're going to get a discount on your purchase price just by being brave enough buying today. And what I'll tell you from just my own experiences, helping hundreds of clients and talking with thousands of our students, this seems to be a trend that is hyperly localized. And what that means is that it depends on what area you are specifically shopping in. So I'll give you an example where I live in Austin, Texas. Just last week, I helped a gentleman shopping at a $1.3 million purchase price. He had been telling me the last couple of months the only way he's going to buy is if he gets a really good deal on the purchase price. And lo and behold, a little bit of consistency and some good luck, he got a home that was originally listed for $1.1 million under contract for just under $800,000, meaning he saved $300,000 on his purchase price. And the appraisal came in at $950,000. So just by being brave enough and executing a plan, this gentleman made $150,000 of immediate equity. These types of opportunities exist in today's market while we're still working within a buyer's market. So let's talk about understanding the market, specifically understanding our market. Like we already talked about, real estate is hyper-localized. So the supply and the demand of the specific neighborhood will dictate if you're in a seller's market or if you're in a buyer's market. And the truth is, while the nationwide market is still in much more of a buyer's market, there are still areas in the US that have a strong demand for a very limited amount of supply. These will act like seller's markets. And there are areas in the US, like I mentioned, that are still overheated and tough to be a buyer in. So when demand outpaces supply, it means we're in a seller's market. And when demand is less than supply, we're in a buyer's market. How can we easily tell if we're in a buyer's market compared to a seller's market? This is vital to understand as you start to shop for homes and craft the right type of offer. It's vital to understand what type of market you're personally in. So, the first thing that we want to consider and look at with the help of a good realtor is we want to understand the months of inventory that are available in our market. Typically, in a normal market, anything more than 6 months of inventory is considered a seller's market. But I put an example here, which is my home market, because it is unique. And that's, again, what's important here. To understand our market, we have to understand our market. So let's look at Austin. Right now, there's currently 3.2 months worth of inventory as of January 2024. In a normal market, if you compare this to normal markets, this means you're going to look at this and say, it's still a seller's market. However, this is a big anomaly. In Austin, the usual amount of inventory, the last, call it 4 to 5 years, is less than a month's worth of inventory. So what this really means is that this is the slowest market and the best time to be a buyer in the last 4 to 5 years. You're going to see, if you look at the data, the amount of inventory in Austin is the most amount in the last 5 years alone. This is a massive sign that this is a buyer's market and that this is a good time to be in this market as a buyer. There are two other stats that we like to focus on to look for as far as indications of being in a buyer's market. The average days on market, we want that to be high. The longer that homes sit on the market, the better the opportunity is as a buyer that the seller is going to give us a good deal. And we want a low average close to list price. And what that means is we want that to be low, right? Because we want the seller, right, to be able to entertain listing prices or final prices that are less than those listing prices. Both of these data points here reinforce the idea that Austin is a buyer's market. Now, again, if you compare this to all the other markets in the US, the data would wrongly tell you, right, that you're still in a seller's market. So being local and working with professionals that intimately understand your market is key. Make sure you do your due diligence and make sure you understand what type of market that you're in. As we're getting ready to craft the perfect offer, now having a good understanding of our market, it's important to understand our competition and who we're up against. So let's get into the mind of our competition. Understanding if we're walking into a home that's going to have multiple offers and a lot of competition is critical. A good realtor is going to be able to give you the inside track from their own research and their own conversations with the listing agent on what type of competition they're expecting for a particular home. Regardless if you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market, there are key characteristics of homes that will increase and decrease demand. So I want to focus on some of the key characteristics that we see have a very positive or negative impact on demand. Let's start with pricing. If a home is priced well or priced under value, typically this is going to be the biggest driver of increased demand. Everybody loves a deal, and for most of us, we're no different. Next, let's talk about being in a desirable neighborhood or location. We all know that in real estate, location is key. We've already covered that in past courses. So think about it this way. Typically, in good neighborhoods, inventory is very tight or very limited. So when a house does come up, already there's pent-up demand. Next is the condition of the home. If a home is move-in ready, meaning it needs little to no work, this is very desirable for most of us. A lot of us don't want to have to get down and do the nitty-gritty work that comes with a light renovation or a heavy rehab. Next, it has great amenities. If it's very easy to access great amenities from this house, a lot of the time that will increase demand because it's something that a lot of us buyers have a keen eye for. It's going to get a lot of offers even if the demand is suppressed in these areas if these key characteristics are met, meaning you're going to need to offer at least ask price if you want to be in a position to buy the house. So if you see a home with a bunch of these key characteristics, whether or not you're in a seller's market or buyer's market, the best approach may not be to come in and lowball on this type of home, especially if you think the value is there. Next, let's talk about something that can decrease demand, the key characteristics that will decrease demand. First, again, is simply just price, right? Being poorly priced or way overpriced is the biggest determining factor of demand in today's market, regardless of what market you're in. And that's because throughout the pandemic and the couple years past pandemic, we saw a huge appreciation spike. And so a lot of people feel like right now they're overpaying to begin with. So if you're reaching and you're overpriced, demand is going to be very suppressed and you will sit on market longer than usual. Now, as a buyer, that's a good thing. If a home is overpriced and sitting on market or has been sitting on market, it's usually a great opportunity for you to come in and offer a significant price decrease, right? And try to negotiate a much better deal and even get the seller to pay for a lot of your closing costs. Besides price, location is the most important piece when it comes to selecting a home. So if we're in a not desirable neighborhood, that's going to suppress our demand. You're going to see a lot less foot traffic coming to check out the house, and typically you're going to see a lot less offers. Next, we have the condition of the home. If it needs to be gut renovated or needs expensive repairs, this is a home that a lot of buyers, particularly first-time home buyers, are going to avoid altogether. And last but not least, there's nothing charming or nothing special about this home. A lot of the times when it comes to particular homes, we want it to stand out. We want it to be memorable. If it does neither of those, it's going to, of course, decrease demand. Homes will struggle to get an offer. That's just part of today's market. So as a buyer, you want to start to think about how do we take advantage of that? So we're starting to understand our market and we know what we're up against with our competition. Let's start talking about crafting the perfect offer. The right offer starts with the right asking price. There are a few key questions you want to ask yourself with the help of your realtor to understand where you want to come in as far as an asking price. Let's start with how long has this particular property been sitting on the market? The longer the property sits on the market, the more wiggle room you have as a buyer. The more likely the seller is going to be willing to negotiate on purchase price. Typically, anything sitting for more than 40 days is subject to a purchase price reduction. That's because typically in a normal market like right now, you want to see that home sold within the first 30 to 45 days. Sellers start to get antsy after that first 30-day mark. Next, has the seller reduced their purchase price before or removed the listing altogether? If the purchase price has been reduced one or more times, this probably means that the home is overpriced to begin with. Overpricing a home is significantly detrimental in today's market. Usually, if a home is overpriced, that means that as a buyer, there's going to be a lot of wiggle room and you could take advantage of the seller again, starting to feel a little bit antsy and feeling the pressure that they got it wrong the first time with their realtor. Going through multiple rounds of price cuts can be devastating to a listing because it creates that fear for us as the buyers that, hey, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe something's actually wrong with this place. So this is a good thing, again, for you as a buyer. If you can make sure that there's nothing wrong with the place, you can tap into this fear and, of course, the insecurities of the seller to negotiate a great price. And last but not least, this is the most important piece. What does the recent market and recent comparables, or called comps, tell me? This, you're going to need the help of a good realtor. Okay, a good realtor should be able to prepare a list of comparables that has recently sold. You do not want to look at active listings because it is no indicator of how that home is actually going to sell and at what price. So tell your realtor, hey, I want to see a list of comps of these types of homes that have sold in a couple mile radius of this home. If it's priced over comparable home sales, you need to understand what makes this home more special compared to the other homes that have sold in this area. Ask your realtor to ask the listing agent or ask the seller directly. If there's nothing special to the home, this means that you should immediately justify your comps and come in under asking price. Do not pay more than comps. It's bad for your investment, it's bad for your neighborhood, and the chances are that your appraisal is going to come in low if you're using a mortgage lender, and you're going to have to come up with additional cash. Quick disclaimer, because we have a lot of students that message us and say, Eric, can I use a Zestimate as a valid comp or a valid value to the home that I'm looking at? Absolutely not. It's not that Zestimates are inaccurate. It's that a lot of the time they are not dependable. Look, for every Zestimate that we look at, 3 out of 10 are accurate or good indicators of what that home's value actually is. But don't do that, right? As a buyer, you work with a realtor, you work with them for a reason, because at this point, you trust them. Hopefully, you've gone through our second course, you've qualified the realtor of your choice, and you understand this realtor is a good fit for you. So depend on them, trust them, and make sure you're looking at recent comps. Last thing is this: never pay more than you're comfortable with. If you don't see the value in a home, do not offer that. If you see the value and you love the home, then of course this goes a long way to making sure that you don't have buyer's remorse. We have a lot of students that 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, they say this is the best decision they ever made. But there are a few that will message us and say, my realtor pushed me to offer more than I was comfortable with. And there's always that sense of buyer's remorse. That's how we end up with a bad investment or a bad position a few years down the road. So if you're not comfortable with it, or your gut is simply telling you not to do it, go in a different direction. The right home will come in the market soon, and that way you're happy with one of the largest investments you'll ever make. So we have an asking price that we're comfortable with, but part of being a successful home buyer is always being one step ahead. So I always want you to come back and plan around a counteroffer. Unless your initial offer is well above and beyond the list price, you need to think about what price you're actually comfortable ending up at before you submit your final offer. Why? Because if you plan on offering less than ask, you can almost always guarantee that you're going to receive a counteroffer before you get to an accepted offer. This is part of the song and dance between buyer and seller, and you need to be prepared to dance. By considering where you want to end negotiations, you'll be able to leave yourself that very needed wiggle room or breathing room to plan out the negotiations the way you see fit. The worst thing that can happen with a counteroffer or the renegotiation is the seller just says no. That is okay. At least you tried, and at least you tried to improve your deal. Remember, you always should use the fair market data to come up with a fair market price. If the data isn't there, then make sure that you have a plan B on why and how you're coming to this valuation. But be very careful, because you don't want to come in too low in today's market, and really any market. You risk offending the seller. Now, if you're like, hey, I just want to throw a dart, in the dark, and you don't mind offending the seller on the way, just realize that the worst case scenario is the seller doesn't have to respond or entertain any of your offers moving forward. But if you don't mind that, go for it. Starting too high, we run the risk of not leaving ourselves that breathing room or that comfortable wiggle room that we talked about. So don't do that. Make sure that you're always leaving yourself a little bit of breathing room in the event of a counteroffer or a thorough negotiation. If the home is overpriced or needs a reno or a rehab for you to move in, it already might be priced in. So it's something to be aware of, and it's something to ask your realtor and have those open conversations between, of course, your realtor and the seller's realtor. How did they get to this price? It's always important to understand that. So let's look at a price negotiation together. And what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to show you an extreme, meaning I'm not going to show you an example where you save $300,000 off a purchase price or 40% off a purchase price, because those opportunities are far and few between. What I'd like to do is show you an example right in the middle of the spectrum, something that we see every single day with our students and our clients. So let's go through it together. Let's say there's been a home and it's been on the market for about a month or 45 days. It's listed at $700,000, but the comps that my realtor sent me only support a true value of $675,000. So that number represents the number I'm comfortable ending up at. If I want to end up at 675, I need to start with an offer that's low enough to give me that wiggle room and make me look like I'm a guy that's willing to meet in the middle or compromise. So I would come in and I offer $650,000. If that seller were to accept it, great. I saved $25,000. But it's not a low enough offer that I'm going to insult the seller and not have them come back to the table with a counteroffer. So in this example, the seller counters with an offer at $690,000. Then I come to them with a final and best at $670,000. This is a great round of negotiations because I, as the buyer, got what I wanted. And the seller, because of the market that we're in, has to make a compromise and negotiate with me. This is a good example of what takes place every single day in today's market. If you can use data to justify why you're coming in lower, the seller is going to be much more willing to actually negotiate and give you a good deal.